Hi, everyone, and welcome to Come Undone. I'm your host, Georgia Rose, a clinical sexologist and a sex coach who helps people with their sex lives. But in this podcast, I'm the one in the hot seat. Over 8 weeks, I'll be going on my own sexual healing crash course to help me get my mojo back after cancer and grief left me feeling like a stranger in my own skin. Each week, I'll have my own sex coaching session with a leading expert, and then I'll take on an assignment. And you'll be right there with me. If you've ever felt disconnected from your body, your desire, or your sexual spark, you're not alone. So welcome. This is my sensual comeback tour, and I'm handing you a backstage pass. How do you redesign your sex life after a huge personal upheaval? That's what I'm exploring this week with UK sex therapist royalty, Kate Moyle. In our one-to-one session, we discuss what it really takes to reboot desire and rediscover yourself sexually. Kate is our first psychosexual therapist on the show, which means we go that little bit deeper into anxieties and why sex can feel so complicated after everything's changed. It's vulnerable, it's honest, and there's some great practical tips in there. Enjoy. Welcome, Kate, to Come Undone, my podcast, which is a live therapy, coaching piece of work. I would say I'm trying not to use the word journey as much. Piece of work, process. Thank you so much for being on here. It's a bit of a pinch me moment to have you here. So thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
So I'm Kate Moyle. I'm a psychosexual and relationship therapist, psychosexologist. I have a podcast called The Sexual Wellness Sessions and a book called The Science of Sex, but have been kind of exploring this world, I guess, for kind of over 10 years now. We were just talking kind of off camera about how I've always been intrigued by kind of these themes of sex and relationships. And I consider myself so lucky to do my job. I really love it. And I think conversations like this, again, are like a big part of that for me.
The listeners, people who are kind of following it week by week, I thought I should probably share where I am now, because I had just done the body de-armoring last session, and I've had a little bit of time to process what I'd done. And I feel that I've definitely been feeling my feels, I would say, since then, which apparently is quite common. So I feel like I've been feeling more of my happy feelings, like that feels more intense. And then I think the things that feel a bit more difficult, I feel that even more strongly as well.
So for the highs more and the lows more.
Yeah. Which
it's
is
like taking the wavelength from this to
this, which is, it hasn't been disruptive, it's just been noticeable.
Okay.
And sort of zooming out at the work so far, the theme has been letting go. So letting go of quite difficult emotions associated with grief, which I think I had really suppressed. And then also letting go of trying to resurrect my old sexual self, which has been quite surprising for me because I didn't quite realize that was such an unconscious block in how I was thinking about sex. It was really, really dominant that I just wanted to go back to her, and I couldn't because I think she doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of left at this potentially exciting but also slightly daunting precipice, which is, I feel a little bit like I'm at ground zero again. I feel like it's an opportunity to rewrite a new sexual script, but it feels a little bit daunting. I feel curious, but
cautious.
Slightly cautious, exactly.
I think there's something for me, and I know you flagged this, and it's something I talk about in therapy for most people that I'm working with. One of the things that we're not really taught about sex is that we can adapt our ideas about it as we go. Different parts of our lives will change how we think and feel about sex, will change the way we have sex, whether that be cancer, medication, injury, accident, childbirth, pregnancy, infertility, the relationship we're in, our menstrual cycle, experiencing sexual pain, that we have a hormonal difference, that we have a breakup, infertility. You know, it doesn't really matter what it is. But when we treat sex as a fixed entity and something that shouldn't change, or we think shouldn't change, then we get very stuck with it. And I
Yeah.
guess that's the kind of bottom line I would guess at that you're describing, that you're feeling stuck with. Because you have to restructure, you have to remodel how you think and feel about sex.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is something that I talk about in therapy, which is, okay, well, how do we restructure our ideas about sex? How do we, so an analogy I might use is, if we've got like the brick wall, but it's kind of a bit wobbly, it doesn't really feel like it's kind of standing upright. We have to take the bricks out, put them all on the floor, and work out a better way of putting them back together. Because it might have been fine for a while. It might have been sturdy for a while, strong enough for a while. But now it's become a bit shaky. It's not really working in the right way for us anymore. It's not doing what it was meant to do.
Yeah, exactly.
What it even looks like for you.
Yeah, I used to really enjoy being very curious and playful within the world of sexuality. As part of my sex coaching training, this idea of getting your feet wet, and there is a encouragement to be a bit of a role model. This idea of going deeper and going further on your own sort of sexual development journey and kind of self, and which allows your client to kind of go deeper into the work as well. And I think I really felt drawn to mindful sex. I thought that was a really interesting kind of way of framing sex, and being very interested in sensuality and how our senses could help us have, more pleasure. And that is basically what sex is, sensation and pleasure. And I was also very interested in the more esoteric stuff. So I was quite drawn to tantric practices. I went to lots of tantric festivals and classes and workshops. And, I've discussed that on this podcast already, but that doesn't really appeal to me anymore. Or maybe it's not that it doesn't appeal to me, but I think maybe the intensity of it and the time required to invest in it, I think doesn't appeal to me as much anymore. So I guess if that's sort of starting to deconstruct and not be as appealing to me, it's like, well, who am I as a sexual person, and where do I play, and how can I feel more liberated, and how do I get to know myself sexually in this new chapter?
Do you think there's something you've mentioned to me before, and I'm aware this is quite a kind of big statement, but do you think there is something around having had cancer and this idea of time and things taking a long time, or too much time, or not enough time? We were having a discussion when we had our coffee earlier, and you said something around feel it like your ideas of time being challenged, because there's been, a doctor has essentially said to you, oh, okay, this, like, life is going to be different. We don't know what this next bit's going to look like, or how much, this is a question we hear in cancer care. And I've worked with lots of people who've had their lives affected by cancer, which is, like, how much time do I have? And treatment takes a time out of your life. Cancer takes a time out of your life.
Yeah.
Surgery has recovery time, all of these things. And yeah, I wonder if that unconsciously perhaps might be a part of it.
I feel like time has been taken away from me. I feel like it's been snatched.
Yeah.
Because I got diagnosed quite soon after COVID was alleviating its grips on our lifestyle. So it was almost like lockdown happened, then I got diagnosed, and then obviously that completely shifts your life, and then grief snatched another part of my life. So my life has been, quote, not normal for quite a few years, like out of step with the way that most probably people in their late 20s, early 30s can think about themselves. So I think there's some grief around that. And yeah, I definitely see that now I have quite a YOLO attitude, which is being sort of resurrected from when I was in my kind of late 20s, I would say. My best mate loves to rave, and we're just loving raving she loves raving 100%. I join her every so often. But I guess that's a little bit out of step, I suppose, with the general tidal wave of my female friends who are starting to think of settling down and having families.
But that focusing on yourself right now is interesting. If you think about raving as an example, it's a pleasure experience. People go, people describe it as quite euphoric. You go, it's immersive.
Yeah.
And I thought there's something interesting about what you said about the kind of Tantra classes and things which are about intensity. And perhaps there's something also going on around the kind of the fear of the intensity again, or the fear of kind of dropping into that because you don't quite know how to do it anymore. There's approach with caution, that sense of, oh, what if I do it and I don't like it, or what if I do it and it feels different?
Yeah.
And that fear of it feeling different would mean also an acknowledgement that things really have changed.
That's a really good observation. Yeah, that's a really good observation.
But I think it's okay for things to have changed, but it just is an adjustment.
Yeah, it's an adjustment. I'm trying to think about how it feels like. It feels a bit like I don't know where to go. Like I feel...
You felt sure and now you don't feel sure at all.
And I feel like I want a roadmap. I'm like, tell me what to do. Tell me where to go. Who should I speak to? And Billy, in the last... one of the last episodes, she was like, do you feel playful? Do you want to go and experiment? And I was like, I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah.
It feels like I still want to be held and brought along a bit. So I think that's kind of how I'm...
Guided.
Yeah. Guided.
Something that often I think can happen, and obviously there's no one size fits all and everyone has their own experiences and lives, but it's sometimes when people kind of have this, whether it's like threat to health, threat to life as it was before, they can kind of sometimes go one of two ways. One, which is that kind of hunker down, really protective way. Plus, also, we have to remember you go through an intense level of medicalization when you're going through any kind of, whether it's cancer or any other medical treatment. There are lots of hands on your body, lots of investigations, like an infinite number of blood tests and examinations, and people kind of talking over you, waiting rooms. Everything's very clinical. And in a way, you have to kind of detach from the body that gave you pleasure and felt good. Yeah. And there's a real detachment. Often we see this as well in infertility treatment.
Okay.
That
disassociation.
Yeah, the disassociation, the disconnection from experiencing everything and enjoying everything and feeling everything is a protective mechanism because it doesn't feel good. And there's something in that sometimes it's not just a switch. We can't just kind of flick it back on once everything's done. And so there's something in that which I think can mean that we separate from ourselves physically and sexually a lot of the time. Yeah. It doesn't have to be like a cervical cancer, a vulval cancer, a penile cancer, testicular cancer. It doesn't have to be a particularly kind of sexual or pelvic orientated cancer. Because we know that chemotherapy changes everything from like how your skin feels to how you feel in your body. You're feeling sick a lot of the time. It's all these things that impact how you feel in yourself, which can therefore have an onward impact with sex. So I think that there's something in that, but also often when people kind of get through these kind of treatments or processes, as to use your word from earlier, there can be a sense of, what do I do now? And sometimes people can go one way, which is they're like, I'm going to push the fuck it button. I'm going to kind of do everything, feel everything, like a bit like you're saying, like the kind of YOLO approach. And other people, it's quite a shell-shocking experience. You feel that you need to recover on so many ways, but also the medical treatment and everything's focused on getting you better and healthy and recovery, but there's less and much better now than there ever was before, but help for the psychological recovery of the trauma of these experiences, these treatments, these, going through the kind of absolute carnage which these things can be, these treatments can be, these experiences can be.
When I was in the thick of it, so, during treatment and, experiencing intense grief twice, kind of grief for my dad's passing, but then sort of panic, I suppose, when my mum got diagnosed. the impact that had on my sexual desire was obviously quite profound. And I sort of want to normalize that for people, because I was very, very grateful for my training in sexology and my understanding of sexual response, my understanding of sexual desire. So I did not panic when my desire just left the building, and any inkling to be sexual or to be in touch with my eroticism was dead in the water. But that was not something that I was anxious about, because I just knew this is not my sexy chapter in the book of life. It will come back. And there's other things in this chapter, and don't worry about it. And I guess that's something that I would want to share on this podcast for people who are going through not just cancer and grief, but anything that feels very, very stressful. Don't worry. It's very normal and appropriate to not want to be a sexual being during that moment in time. For me, I guess the challenge has been reacquainting myself with my sexual side afterwards.
But desire isn't a fixed entity. It's not like we have a fixed amount.
No.
And it stays. Sex is always in context. Our sex lives are always in context. And so, of course, when you talk about, what the last few years have been like for you, it's not really a surprise that sex changed when absolutely everything else changed.
Yeah, exactly.
And, one of the things I often hear from people is, oh, I just thought this would sort itself out. And I question that with, but does anything else in your life just sort itself out? Does any kind of injury or medical change or biological change just sort itself out? Does anything that needs some kind of extra help just sort itself out? And the answer is no, the majority of the time.
Yeah.
And how we think about desire, if it's that we are motivated to do something, so desire is, we separate desire. So desire, the motivation or wanting or kind of moving towards a sexual experience, kind of wanting of a sexual experience. And that's not just sex, but kind of openness towards something sexual happening. Arousal, the body's physical process of preparing for sex. So these are two separate parts of a sexual experience or parts of an experience. They don't have to necessarily lead to something sexual, but commonly they happen together. And if we are feeling anxious or scared or unsure or stressed,
angry,
exactly, we're not going to be motivated to move towards
more
something
sex,
or open to the possibility of something. And what I often describe is, so I'll give you a really common example. Someone's experiencing sexual pain for whatever reason that is, whether they have an explanation for that or not. So what they start to do is they start to be worried about the potential of sex or a sexual experiencing happening. So they start to pull away from anything that might lead to sex, because they also might not necessarily be able to say, sex is really hurting me at the moment. Also, a lot of the time, sexual pain can be something that physically is invisible. We don't, it's not obvious. It's not like a kind of, we've broken our arm.
Yeah.
And so our motivation for sex or our desire for sex, our interest in sex plummets in response to it no longer being something which was motivating and felt good for us, because now it's kind of coded to us as something which is, bad, painful, negative, disappointing, etc. And so in response to that, we stop wanting it. We're not motivated by it in the same way anymore.
Yeah.
When you break it down to the basics of it, it makes so much sense. If you go to a restaurant and the meal is bad, you're not going to rush to go back.
Yeah.
If you had a really nice time,
you want to go back.
We want to go back again. It's how everything in life operates, but we have this different kind of ideas that this should be different when it comes to sex.
Yeah.
But it makes sense logically. Now, if we are in a place where we physically, emotionally feel really vulnerable, really exposed, unsure, no longer confident, scared, anxious, it doesn't provide a kind of comfortable space for us to be like, oh yeah, sure, I'm just going to try that and see what happens. If that's how you're feeling. because you are scared, you are anxious, you're on edge. And also everything in your body and your brain is going like, oh, I don't know if I like this. I think I'd rather avoid it. Remembering that avoidance is the most natural way we know of managing anxiety. It doesn't change anxiety or solve it. It just keeps us away from it. Just stops us approaching it.
Yeah. Do you think that's what's happening with me? For me, having a bit of trepidation to play or explore.
I think you're scared about getting it right. Or maybe it not being what you hoped for. Or you're kind of managing your potential disappointment around it. And I think the added layer of being a sex coach is you feel that there's an expectation or a pressure for you to be someone who gets it right or knows. Yeah. I would argue you'll probably learn more about it not going perfectly.
Yeah.
And sex is messy. Yeah. Relationships are messy. Intimacy is messy. It's not perfect. Yeah. You know? And there is something in the reality of it that sex is meant to be imperfect as an experience. I think that's where so many people get caught up in it. And I wonder for you if there's this kind of parallel process going on, which is that, oh, okay, but if I'm also kind of helping other people with this, I should know, I should get it right.
Yeah, I think there is a pressure that kind of bears down on you that, I'm the expert. You know, I shouldn't be getting this wrong. And I'm definitely a perfectionist as well. I know that. And also this whole, I think anyone who watches this or listens to this will know that by now. That's like been raised in most of these sessions. I think there is this sort of expectation or this weight that you feel that you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I should get this right. B, maybe I should have a kind of sexual persona or land in a certain sphere. So, for example, I'm a bit like, well, maybe if Tantra doesn't work for me, maybe I should be exploring Kink. And that's exciting and that could be interesting. And I haven't done that before. And maybe, I'm missing out on that world. And I guess what's triggered that, though, is I went to a workshop, Charlene Douglas's. Like she did like a whole day event. She's a sex therapist. Yeah, she's lovely. So she's a sex therapist on Married at First Sight. And it was really lovely. It was a really, really great day. I loved it. And she had lots of different practitioners come and showcase what their work was about, from doctors all the way to dominatrixes. And one of the dominatrixes came up and she asked for some volunteers, so I came up and we did some power play, which I found quite fascinating. And it was just someone is the dom, someone is the sub, and the dom only used 6 words, which was like come, stop, down, turn around, go. And I volunteered to be a sub, and I found that quite cool. I never really done anything like that before, but I was like, oh, I can kind of see how this could be quite interesting. So I was like, oh, maybe I should explore that world for a little bit. But I guess what Elena was sort of getting at me last week or last session was, why do you have to explore anything?
Yeah. I've got a few thoughts. One is it not okay for it to change, for you to have been into one thing and now you're interested in another?
Yeah, for sure.
And the other thing was, I wonder if what you really liked about that is you just had to follow the instructions. Yeah. So, with being in the kind of sub position, you didn't have to think about anything. You didn't have to lead anything. You didn't have to know.
Yeah.
It gave you permission to just go with it and see how it felt.
Yeah.
And for me, this is a phrase I use with my clients all the time, is do what feels good. And it's really basic. And, Emily Nagoski has the kind of phrase, pleasure is the measure. And I love it. And, I'm obviously just fangirl her so hard all the time.
You love her.
But I do love her.
She's your sex queen.
She's my pin-up. But there is something in that which is really important, which is that you're holding on to these shoulds. Okay, well, I should. So you've got these kind of, and I wonder if you've got these parallels. As a sex coach, I should X, Y, Z. As a person, X, Y, Z. As a woman, I should, and you kind of, we laugh, I always laugh about like shoulds in therapy, but like you're shoulding all over yourself.
Yeah.
And for me, I would want to encourage you, if I was working with you, to kind of pare back that a bit and focus on, okay, well, what's feeling good for me right now? And maybe it's okay just to explore that, baby steps, that stage one of that. And yes, something might have felt really good for a certain period of your life, but it's okay for something else to feel good for a different period of your life. And again, that will probably change. And that's where therapy comes in. I use the word permission. Therapy is permission. Coaching is permission.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. And sometimes we do need to be given permission. We do need to have a bit of help, a bit of steering, a bit of guidance to say to someone, these are the worst things I think about myself, the things that I feel so ashamed of, the things that I am so mortified about. I can't even tell the person I've been married to for 10 years, the things that have, absolutely racked me with guilt or negative feelings about myself. Because what does it mean about me that I'm a person that X enjoys this, doesn't want to do this, feels this way, doesn't know how? And that's where we need to go back to basics, which is, okay, well, what kind of touch feels good for you? And I wonder for you as well, if, this level of caution is also the fear of feeling everything again. In order for you to sexually get to a place that you want to be at, you have to feel everything, and that includes feeling all the stuff that you haven't wanted to feel. And being back in your body post-treatment, post-cancer.
Yeah.
There's no avoiding it or shutting it down. It means you lose control in some way of when you get hit by the waves of grief, when you get hit by, a feeling in your body which you've associated now with having had cancer, or a time in your life when your brain kind of takes you back there, or your memory takes you back there. Or often people talk about things like the smell in hospital, or the beeping of machines, or having to have a blood test, or a vaginal exam, and a song that was played at a funeral. It's all that stuff. If we're on kind of physical lockdown or kind of overprotection, we can kind of control to a degree when that stuff hits us or not. If we are open and we're vulnerable, then we're not protected from feeling it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. An orgasm is a lot. For a lot of people, it's really overwhelming. The fear of letting go means I lose control in the presence of someone else if it's a partnered experience. Some people can't do that on their own because they were told that it was a thing to be ashamed of, a thing that shouldn't happen, that it was reserved for a particular type of sex, or that they were told that their body was not for pleasure, or that it was something that, is associated with trauma or abuse, and that is a lot of work to be done sometimes in untangling that. But often if we are scared about letting go, then holding back or holding on really tightly to everything is a way of controlling what can feel like, if it gets out of control, that we'll get out of control, that we'll be scared of that we don't know what to do with it. Is it better to be, we were talking about earlier, like the kind of, is it better for the waves to be like this? Because whilst I don't get the real highs and I don't get the real lows, I get enough and it's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine. It's enough.
Yeah.
But I'm not in it. I'm not kind of getting, you've got a sense of knowing, I guess for you, you kind of currently are in a place of knowing that you haven't got something that you want, or what you're missing in some way.
Yeah.
Because of your history of having had it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like an absence in some way.
I really, really loved practices and rituals, and that's something I brought to my own cancer care away from the medicine. I bought loads of holistic rituals and practices, and I think that almost came from the world of Tantra and self-development. I think I was very, very interested in all that. And I really loved sort of bringing that into my sex life. And you can learn so many really beautiful, slow ritualistic, quite meditative practices within Tantra
Mm-hmm.
and bring that. And, you know, my partner was always, bless him, like very open-minded towards that. I mean, I dragged him to almost a week-long tantric sex festival. But I guess I really love that. And I guess I don't have that anymore. And I miss that, I suppose. I do miss that. But I don't know where else to find that, because I associate that now with my disillusionment, I guess, with certain aspects of that world. So, I don't know, Billy, for example, said, you know, maybe you owe it to yourself to, you know, pick up the baton again or something, or see if there's anything there that still appeals. But I don't know, I guess I have a bit of resistance to it.
What's the resistance to?
I think there's quite a lot of bullshit in that world sometimes. And I think I've always had a bit of a sniff for it. And I've been quite good at locating practitioners and stuff that I thought were really like solid in their practice. But sometimes that hasn't been quite right. So I think maybe it doesn't feel very safe.
Okay.
As safe as it did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Safety would be important right now as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there something you could do which is taking the smallest bits of the things that you used to love and trying them yourself in a way that feels safe for you to do? The smallest practices, the literally kind of toe in the water bits on your own terms.
Yeah.
Finding a way of doing it that isn't the old way that you did it.
Maybe.
And I think that's the thing is, you know, anything, whether it's, you know, Tantra or therapy or yoga, or, you know, going to the gym, whatever it is, we can kind of throw ourselves into something as much or as little as we want based on the person, our experiences, our context, where we're at. You know, what's going to feel amazing for one person isn't going to feel amazing for the next.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's something we talk about in therapy. Not every, you know, I won't be the right therapist for everyone. And I'm very comfortable saying that to everyone in the first session, because you can't be. And you can't give everyone everything that they want all the time. Nobody can do that.
Yeah.
And no one practice can do that for everyone. No type of food will be everyone's preference. No type of sex will be everyone's preference. But if we approach it with that, and we say, okay, well, what would feel good for me about this? What would I like about this? What doesn't quite feel right for me about this right now?
Yeah.
And localizing that in the now, then maybe it's actually the framework that you're operating in as well, which is, if I have to do it, I have to do it like I used to do it. And maybe you can find a new way of doing it, and you of exploring it on your own terms.
Yeah.
Because
it doesn't have to be this, like, it is my identity.
Yeah.
Which is very classic me. When I, like, you know, when I go in, I go all in. I'm very passionate.
But maybe that's the block, is that you're not ready to go all in yet.
Yeah.
But you have to give yourself, you know, it's a very therapy word, but you have to give yourself permission to not go all in.
Yeah.
That going all in right now looks like doing something tiny.
Yeah. And that's absolutely fine. It doesn't have to be.
Everything's fine.
Intensity. I know everything is fine.
The reality is, it's your life.
Yeah.
Just because someone else does it one way, just because you used to do it another way. And, you know, these are themes that, you know, I talk about all the time in psychosexual therapy. Like, these all relate to everything, which is finding what feels good for you, but recognizing that as is something that also might be adapted, might change, might feel good for you this month, but might not next month, might feel good for you with your ex-partner, but doesn't with your current one. Might feel good for you when you're 21, but not when you're 31. You know, it's that whole
flexibility.
Flexibility. How do we do this? We're, you know, constantly reviewing and adapting. And we do it in loads of different areas of our lives. We used to drink our coffee with milk. Now we have it black.
Yeah.
You know, we used to put sugar on our cereal. Now we don't. We used to kind of like running. Now we do weight training. It's an interesting thing for me that we don't approach sex in the same way.
It's really interesting, because I guess before this conversation, when I felt like I was on the precipice, I guess what I thought was maybe it was like a leap into, maybe like the lake, let's say, rather. I don't like the idea of falling over the cliff. More like I'm jumping in. And that's kind of, I guess, what I was expecting. But I guess after this conversation, it feels like, no, you can put your toe in, or you could just wade into your ankles, or, you could take a little walk first. It doesn't have to be this, the intensity, I guess, that I guess you've been able to identify was maybe, again, something I was putting on myself.
Well, maybe also jumping makes you feel more anxious because you have to jump.
Yeah.
Whereas
It doesn't
you might feel less anxiety if you just step.
Yeah.
And it would make sense that anxiety would be appropriate. But again, it might also be that you kind of you wade into your ankles and you're, it feels really good. Or it's like, it feels a bit too much. I'm going to stay here for a bit. And that's only something that, you have, I guess, the anticipation of anxiety, the anxiety about the anxiety, and you have the anxiety itself. And it's that, at the moment you're in this big redesign. We were talking about desire. How do I know what I want? How do any of us know what we want?
Yeah.
How do I know what's going to feel good for me? How do I know how I want to feel? How do I know if that's going to feel the same as it used to? And these are really big questions and that's why, when we talk about kind of in therapy, like going back to basics, going back to the baby steps, going with this reintegration of, okay, well, how about we just kind of see how it try something small and see how it feels. And this is about your comfort zone, essentially. If you're feeling really uncomfortable and it's not a kind of consensually, deliberately uncomfortable sexual situation, let's say like a kind of BDSM or a kink scene where you're choosing pain, where it's consensual and that's something that you want. If you're in that kind of sense of something uncomfortable, give yourself a chance just to know what it feels like, or to be like, okay, do I like this? Do I not? Would I like to take this further? Would I like more of this? Would I not? And see what's going on for you in that, because I think also you're putting yourself under pressure currently to have to get it right.
Yeah.
And that's a massive fear that lots of us have all the time, particularly when it comes to sex and relationships. We don't have the conversations about trial and error, about getting it wrong. We all assume we're meant to be experts about it and know everything and not ask questions, etc. And actually, that doesn't need to be the case. But again, it's okay to take your time with it. It's okay to say, okay, I don't know, but I'm just going to try and see how it feels. And we know that about comfort zones. When we're in the middle and we stay put, we stay safe and we stay comfortable. But when we but then our comfort zone might feel smaller. We might stay more limited, perhaps. So, but when we kind of play in the areas like around the edge or kind of close to the boundaries and it goes well, we can kind of expand a bit more. We can accommodate a bit more. We can be a bit more confident, feel a bit more comfortable, be a bit more sure. But the risk is it doesn't go that well. And then it kind of confirms our fears or our doubts sometimes. But it's the balance between those things.
Yeah.
And when we are feeling protective, like you've kind of identified that you think you might be, then it makes more sense that you're a bit more scared about testing the limits.
Yeah, and going out. Yeah. I think everything that I've done so far, I think it's interesting that you've said that, because I found this process to be so unbelievably helpful because it's been so held. And like different practitioners, I mean, I feel so lucky. I've actually had like different practitioners who are so amazing at what they do, kind of hold me through this. And that's felt, I've been able to be on the other side of it and see how helpful this work is. And A, by being permission giving, B, by holding up a mirror, and C, by just being supportive and encouraging and creating like a framework with which you can feel kind of safe to maybe go up to the edge of that comfort zone and be encouraging. And everything I've done so far has been contained. So, if I'm expressing my like tricky, sludgy, difficult emotions associated to grief, I've done them in protected areas like an anger room, or with a therapist in Amsterdam doing body work for, most of the day, like very contained. And so I guess there's almost like a part of me being like,
scared to do it on your own.
A little bit, yeah. Like, I wanted to be contained. Someone help me. But, maybe there's actually opportunity for me to do that. I'm really enjoying working with practitioners. And I think that's maybe okay.
Also, maybe it's okay to be a bit scared.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, it's okay to be a bit fearful and wanting that support. Yeah. Thanks. Anything else?
I don't know where we would follow on from that. I feel like that's
a good.
I think there is something about just acknowledging that most of us are scared or a bit nervous or have a sense of anticipation when we feel like we're doing something new.
It's like an evolving, I feel.
It's a different phase, a different stage. It's about not finding the right way, but just finding the way that feels good for you. And I think you're trying to work out how to find the right way.
Yeah, rather than
maybe actually kind of doing it and trying it and seeing how it feels.
Yeah, I think it's a better way of doing it. And it probably doesn't sound super profound, but it does feel different. It feels like a real internal shift to not be looking back, but to be looking forward.
And Julia Samuel, who's a big, amazing kind of expert in the field of grief and loss, she always says you can't unknow what's happened. You can't unknow what you've been through. And I think that sometimes that going back is a focus on, I want to unknow that. I want to unknow that all of that stuff happened. Or if I go back, then there's also maybe an acceptance or an acknowledgement that it did all happen.
Yeah. Yeah, although I do try and embrace it's very me as well, like try and embrace the good lessons from it, because I actually prefer me now to how I was, in a way. I feel wise, like a sage. Assignments.
Yes.
What would you suggest I do as an assignment?
So my assignment for you is going to be a pleasure journal.
Okay.
So we were talking about desire, and desire is also about us connecting to things that we want and things that we feel good, and it's going to be about building a practice. And this will be a dipping your toe in rather than a dive, which is in your day, I want you to notice 3, let's say 3, but if it's 5, great, things that give you pleasure, and to kind of take note of it. So it's a really mindfulness-based exercise, a really mindful exercise. So an example might be you put on a really soft jumper, and like the feeling of it on your skin and on your arms feels really nice. So you do that, you take a moment to really notice what feels good about it, notice the pleasure. And just even if you give it kind of 5, 10, 15, however many seconds, but just give yourself time to really notice that it feels good, where you feel the pleasure in your body, like take a deep breath and just kind of ground yourself in that for a moment. And I'm aware this sounds quite therapy.
No,
but
I mean, I do this with my clients as well.
It's the practice of noticing pleasure when it happens, and particularly with this like crazy kind of busy world that we all live in, which is kind of go, production, kind of what can we do? We can do the most in the least amount of time. And it's just the act of noticing. And it's about building a practice of connecting with things that make you feel good. So the first sip of coffee in the morning, like getting into bed when you've got clean sheets, the sun on your face when you walk out the front door. It's not about sexuality, and it's not about sex, and it's not about sexualized pleasure. It can be, but it's just about connecting with pleasure in a regular, small way, and then noticing is the important bit, because it will also get you practicing how you notice it when it is in a sexual context a bit more.
Okay. Flexing that pleasure muscle.
Yeah.
Okay. Done. I'll do that. Thank you. I'm looking forward to doing that. That sounds really lovely. I actually set that similarly for a client recently, and I found it actually quite inspiring. Her messages back to me about what she was doing. I was like, oh, very nice. So yeah, no, it'll be good to do it myself. Thank you so much for this therapy session. Really, really, really appreciate it. Do you want to tell people how they can find you? Or, I mean, I feel like if they just Googled Kate Moyle, do you have a Wikipedia page? I feel like you should.
I hope not. My website is my name. The book is The Science of Sex. The podcast is The Sexual Wellness Sessions. And each episode is a deep dive into a particular topic to do with sex and relationships. And my Instagram is Kate Moyle Therapy. And that's kind of where you'll find me.
My stomach is grumbling. Yes, everyone follow Kate. And thank you so much for being here and for the work that you do.
Thank you.
And now stick around, I'm heading into the assignment next. As you know, I'm bringing you guys along for the ride, and I'll mic myself up and you're going to be able to hear snippets of what's going on in the assignment, as well as my reflections. The whole point of this project is to be as immersive as possible and to really show you what the sex coaching process is all about. So here we go. Hello. So I have done the pleasure journal. I did it for about a week, and honestly, I found it quite hard, and which surprised me because I think the task sounds very simple on paper, to notice small moments of pleasure through the day and savor them. And there were things that I did really enjoy. For example, my first morning coffee from my favourite overpriced coffee shop in central London, or cuddling my freshly groomed dog. That was very lovely. And, noticing all the nature and beautiful flowers on my different dog walks. Those little sensory moments were really lovely and I enjoyed them. But what really struck me was how out of practice I am at actually noticing them. I had to keep reminding myself to slow down and pay attention. So it didn't feel very instinctive, really, to be noticing pleasure. And it didn't feel super easy to access, if I'm totally honest. Like that sort of slow, very gentle nature of the exercise. There was like a small feeling of maybe it was disassociation or feeling a bit disconnected from the practice. And I think there is this idea within, I don't know, I guess wellness culture that, this idea of slowing down and being mindful, like you'll automatically feel calm and grounded and very connected to yourself. But I'm not sure if it's as straightforward after trauma, to be honest. And I think, I noticed that back in episode 2 when I did the goddess breath. I guess like my nervous system probably feels more familiar with intensity and busyness and adrenaline and being in survival mode. So that sort of subtle, gentler, softer, mindful practices, it does feel a little bit unfamiliar. So this exercise has definitely taught me and reminded me that mindfulness is a practice. It's something that we need to practice, and I am very much out of practice. So that's a bit of a kick up the bum to develop my practice, start small and build up. So all really useful information. And it shows that reconnecting to pleasure isn't always this sort of blissful, sensual, grounded experience. It sometimes feels awkward. It sometimes feels like effort. And, especially when you've been disconnected from your body. But I also felt like the practice, I don't feel negative about it because I do feel that my instinct is still like towards pleasure. I still have the capacity for it. I was very drawn towards warmth and beauty and connection and touch and nature. So that's all really good. It's just that muscle needs to be exercised more. So it's something definitely interesting there about gentleness versus intensity and, where the mind goes. So more to think about really. Over and out. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Come Undone. If you're feeling inspired to explore your sexuality, whether after a big life event or simply because you feel disconnected, head over to my website. You'll find the details in the description, along with a workbook I've created to go hand in hand with this podcast. It's designed as a stepping stone to help you reconnect to your body and your sexual spark.